Hey there, RPG fans. How's it going? I mean, you can't answer me, I'm just a disembodied voice in your head, but that's alright. Hopefully you're doing okay. I'm Greg Dalmage, I'm your host for this next episode, and it's a doozy. We like to talk. I apologize, but hopefully you enjoy all the conversation we had on this one, and it sounds a lot better! Oh my gosh, does it ever? I hope you agree. At any rate, we have had a lot happening at the website since the last episode, so let's quickly check in on that and get on with it. Firstly, on to the feature department. Tina Ola has released the 6th entry in her crowdfunding chronicles, or ongoing saga of what's happening in the self-funded indie game world. So check that out if you want to see what the latest and greatest is there. As well, just a reminder that RPG Fans' 3-part series, the 60 most anticipated games of 2019, is live as well. The biggest boom is in the reviews department, which let's just dive right into that. First of all, we have Jonathan, who reviewed West of Loathing and gave it editor's choice, so be sure to check that one out. As well, Audra was very positive on Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey Redux. On a less positive note, Alana's review of The Liar Princess and The Blind Prince showed some of the cracks in the veneer of this stylish yet lackluster RPG. And Kingdom Hearts 3. Zach plowed through that game in no time flat and gave us a fantastic review on it, so check that out for sure. Robert Fenner was diving into the visual novel genre once more with urban legend Shin Hayarigami. And finally, Bob Richardson was all over Pillars of Eternity 2 Dreadfire's latest DLC release, The Forgotten Sanctum. We've also got a treat. Last episode, we spoke about Edge of Eternity and Anthem, and now Caitlin has her 2 previews up of both those games, so if you want a little more in-depth look at what she experienced, go check those out on the website. And finally, on to the music department. Deltarune Chapter 1 released just at the tail end of 2019, and Adam Lurs took the time to review the Chapter 1 OST for us. So if you want to hear Toby Fox's latest compositions, check out his thoughts on that. And without further ado, on to episode 159 of Random Encounter. Hey everybody, good day, good night, good afternoon, whenever you're listening to Random Encounter, it's a good time of day. I'm your host, Greg Dalmage, and today I'm joined by a couple swell folk. I've got Caitlin RJ Rose.
Hey guys, Leon Kazero pretty much everywhere, but you knew that already, I'm sure.
And we have Nathan Lee.
Hey guys, I'm the Smash King on Discord, boards, and on Twitter as SmashKing27.
And because they're both reminding me about a thing that I told them to do and I totally did not do, you can find me on Twitter at Greg Dalmage. So we're back with some more podcasts, this time with better audio. Thank you everyone who gave really nice feedback last time on the show, despite my misgivings and insecurities. Everyone was very, very positive, both on staff and our listenership, so thanks for that, team. We are here to talk about a bunch of stuff. We've got some games we've been playing. Nintendo Direct dropped this past week, and lots of good RPG news in that to unpack, so let's just dive on into it. Caitlin, let's start with you. You've been playing some fun stuff lately, going into some of 2018's big hits. What you got for us today?
So, a couple things. I, first off, finally started playing God of War, the 2018 sequel/reboot that I, hadn't gotten around to, like a lot of stuff from 2018, but I got it for Christmas and finally was able to start it up, and I really like it. It's kind of amazing how much I like it, considering I got really turned off from God of War 3. I was super, super turned off by God of War 3 to the point where I didn't care about the series anymore after that game. And thus far, this game, this 2018 God of War, it's doing a lot of stuff right. It's gotten me interested again in the series, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the rest of the game is like, and I'm looking forward to maybe future games in the series in this kind of style. They basically did a lot right with this game, I think. And I mean, we've talked about it on the show. I know Derek talked about it a bunch closer to when it actually came out, so I'm not going to go into super detail about it. But it's interesting to see some of the things that they've done to modernize the game experience. Obviously, there are RPG elements in the game, which is why we cover it. And what they've done to sort of kind of keep the traditional kind of dark, gory, kind of violent, that you would expect from a God of War game. But unlike previous entries in the series that are part of the reason why it got turned off, it doesn't seem, at least where I am in the game thus far, it doesn't seem so needlessly gratuitous as it did in the past. I think part of that is just the fact that Kratos, being much more world-weary and older, and he's seen a lot more, and he's kind of trying to run away from things, sort of just have his own little retirement out in the woods. I think in some respects he's a bit more restrained, and the game itself is a bit more restrained in how it presents the action and the violence and whatnot. So not that there isn't some really massive, some impressive attacks and whatnot, that boss fight against, that early boss fight that I'm sure most people know and think of quite well when they think of this game was amazing. And wow. But yeah, I don't know. It doesn't feel like the old God of War where half of the fun, it seemed, was just inventing new and variously disgusting different ways for Kratos to dispatch his enemies.
Which is definitely what it seemed like. That's always what kind of had me bouncing off the series, was just the hyper-violence of it all. There's enough of that out there, and it wasn't something that I felt the need to have to dive into at this point in my life, of just get in there wailing on things as much as possible. So it's nice to see that, as with Derek's review and everyone's positive feedback on it, that this one kind of milded it out, and I don't know, does it really justify it more, or?
I mean, it doesn't necessarily justify it. It's sort of the same thing as in the original God of War, where it's like, oh, these are demons or monsters or whatnot, and they're in your way, so you should kill them.
It's kind of like means to an end, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, like, Kratos, he's older, he's world-weary, he's clearly trying to escape sort of all the shenanigans that led him to what he'd had to do in the original trilogy and whatnot. I never played, Ascension, so I don't even know what the heck goes on in that game. But he's still Kratos, and he's still a demigod / god, because of course things got a little blurry when he became the God of War. So I mean, to that extent, it's still kind of like you play as Kratos, you kind of expect, violence and some gratuitous and some, kind of impressive shenanigans when it comes to how you kill enemies. But it does not seem like the focus is so much just on that presentation of violence. It's still present. It's still part of the combat, obviously. And I think that's the other thing with this game is the focus on the story and the relationship between Kratos and his son is much more in focus than the stories in previous God of War games. So that helps a lot to humanize Kratos, to make him a more interesting and relatable protagonist, and to get you more invested in playing through the game, as opposed to previous entries where, I don't know, it's not that there wasn't story in the previous entries, but the focus seemed so much on just go to this impressive looking area and beat up a bunch of bad guys and fight a gigantic, really cool looking boss, and then fight more bosses, and, always sort of trying to one up the how can we make this bigger and more violent and more gore and blood and whatnot. So now, having said that, I'm only probably still in the opening portions of the game. I just got to the lake, so it's entirely possible that the violence and the gore ramps up later in the game, and I just don't know what I'm talking about. But as of right now, with my sort of relatively brief introduction, I like it, and it's doing a lot to repair, I guess, my relationship with the series that kind of just completely crashed and burned after God of War 3.
That's good to hear, that the reboot did, I guess, what it needed to do. It's just a question, I guess, of where it goes from here. I myself haven't gotten into it, and as interested as I am, there's just so many other things on my plate that kind of have taken precedence. I know for yourself, like, this one was on your radar, but you got it from your not-so-secret Christmas wish list, if I recall.
Yes, the wish list that I knew exactly when things got bought, because I didn't set it to not tell me because I like being spoiled. I don't mind being spoiled.
How are you generally with surprises? Are you one of those people that hate surprises, or do you need the control of knowing when it's all going to happen?
No, I'm okay with surprises, but
Okay.
it's when it comes to a Christmas wish list, it's kind of, for me anyway, nice to know that the person or people that you sent it to actually looked at it and looked at it and said, oh, okay, she wants this, so I'll get her this, like instead of just taking it under suggestion and being like, okay, maybe.
Have a macrame picture I made. I mean, the thought counts, but I kind of want a God of War.
Yeah. Some of my family are pretty good at just getting me random stuff that, I mean, it's nice and I appreciate the thought, but sometimes it's things that I don't really need or want, and they just end up getting, sitting on my shelf collecting dust, or I regift them. So
there's no shame in
yeah.
that. No shame in that at all. We've definitely been guilty of that ourselves. What about you, Nathan? Are you a regifter, or do you keep everything you get always?
I feel kind of bad if I ever regift anything. But if it's something I really won't use, then maybe I might.
I think it's where it lies with me too. Or I definitely give it a good college try in my living space for a while before I know it was a thing. But before I get around to condoing it and just realizing, I don't use this thing or it's not here. I'm just keeping because it was something nice my mom gave me. But like, do I really need this plate that says Paris on it just because I went to Paris? No, I don't. Love you, Mom. Love the gifts you give me, and I love that they come from a thoughtful place, but it's just, I have enough plates as it is. You know what I mean? So I think it comes from that sort of place. Well, that's cool. I'm glad you had a chance to get into one of 2018's big hits, Caitlin. And again, yes, I don't know for myself if I'll down the line get into myself. Nathan, did you ever do any of the God of War?
I played God of War 1 and 2 on PS2 when they came out. I love the combat in those games. I think combat's amazing. The gameplay is really good, just in general, but I could never like Kratos as a character.
Yeah.
So that was always my big turnoff. That's why I never went further with the series after that.
He's even more unlikable in 3, so you did not miss anything in that respect.
Alright, sounds good.
What is it about him that you aren't a fan of?
I don't know, I feel like he's super one-dimensional. He's just like, I'm angry and kill things. Yeah, that's basically how I feel about Kratos. So I could never, like...
Legit.
Yeah, there's a character, like, I want more from characters in video games, and for me, Kratos was just an angry person who just wanted to kill gods and get revenge, so... That's something I can't really get behind, and I just want more from my video games.
It gets pretty one note when it's just that all the time. You need, like, the palette cleanse and some ups and downs. It's the same for any media, any story you consume. If it's all one note, eventually you just get so bored and or desensitized by it that it stops having meaning.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Which as far as I understand, the recent God of War brought that to it.
It's definitely a different direction, I think. In a lot of, like the entire game in some respects is a different direction. It's, even the combat is much more tactical in nature than the original God of War.
The original was more button mash combo heavy kind of thing, wasn't it?
At least as far as I was concerned when I was playing it. Yeah, it's not that I didn't have any strategy in the original God of War, but you were very much encouraged to just be aggressive and wail on your enemies as much as you could using your various different options with regards to range or close melee. And you can try that in this God of War, but you're probably going to get your butt handed to you because the game wants you to do things like you have a shield that you are encouraged to use to block and to parry attacks, and that can open up more opportunities for attacking. And you have the axe, which is really cool. I love the Leviathan axe. It's a really cool mechanic about, throwing the axe and having it return to you, Thor style.
Neat.
And letting it freeze enemies or trip them up. And that's really cool. But it's not as overpowered as the Blades of Chaos or whatnot. His chained blades from the previous games.
Oh, those.
Because they gave you they were powerful, but they gave you a lot of space if you wanted it, depending on what moves you use. Because you could attack in front of him, but you could also spin them around and sort of give yourself a little bit more room if you were getting surrounded. So it made it much easier to just jump into the middle of a bunch of enemies and just wail and for the most part, usually be okay. And you can't really do that with the axe in this God of War. So you're much more encouraged to think a bit more tactically and attack where you can, and then dodge and parry and whatnot, and use equipped runes and whatnot to give yourself a little bit more either space or do a mega damage move. So
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that helps too. Like, I mean, it's not super wailing action or combat is a lot of fun too, and there's certainly room for that. But
I'm now just thinking of a game where it's an RPG where you go out whaling and you have to like fight off Greenpeace and stuff. Super whaling action. Oh my God. For the people who are whaling enthusiasts. You're horrible human beings. But no, it's I like it when games have a more in-depth and robust combat system that gets you to think a bit instead of just mashing a button and just getting in your opponent's face all the time. I mean, I've been playing through Breath of the Wild a lot lately, and same with even Horizon Zero Dawn. Like, there's as much skill that is necessary as is the equipment you're using. So you have to kind of weigh how you are going to, and I guess to an extent Dark Souls as well, you have to weigh how much you're going to commit to each action and such. And that really gives you pause, and it makes the game a lot more engaging because you feel like you have that much more control over your actions. And when you screw up, you know you screwed up. It punishes you for it, I'm guessing, especially with God of War.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, it's a God of War game, so it's not like your other RPGs where you have healing potions or spells that you can easily regain your health. You get health drops from enemies and sometimes from items, and I have a talisman equipped right now that lets me get a short healing burst on cooldown, of course. So there's a little bit of that ability to recover, but it's not on demand. So if you get into a bad spot, you may have to wait a while before you can get your health back. And I presume, I'm playing on normal or balanced or whatnot, I presume that the higher difficulties you go into, the fewer of those health drops you actually get.
That makes sense.
So, or maybe it's just that enemies hit that much. I mean, I'm assuming they hit harder, but there's probably a scarcity of resources the higher up you go, which I'm not about that. I think we've mentioned before on the show that I'm not the kind of person who's like gonna go for the hardest difficulty for challenge. I'm just fine on normal.
Not all of us need to be Stephen Meyering. At any rate, God of War was a good game. People have been loving it. It's almost been a year now since it came out, so we'll see if there's any other talk of it. How did it land a year later with other publications and such? Moving back in time with the conversation, you've also been doing some Octopath, which is another darling from last year, which, again, that came out in July last year, so we're not even near the 1 year mark. But how's that playing for you, Caitlin? What brought you back to it? Because I think you've already gone through it once, haven't you?
Oh, no. This is my first time playing.
Oh, it is your first time playing. Oh, that's amazing.
Yes.
I need to get that myself, actually, since I got the Switch, and I have been remiss.
I hated myself for not picking it up when it came out. I just couldn't budget it at the time, so it got on my backlog, and eventually I was just like, this is a good Christmas request because I don't have time to play it right now anyway. So yeah, my first time playing, and I love it. It's so good.
Did you do the demo at all?
I played the first demo. I didn't play the second demo. So
then that's all I've done myself. And yeah, it definitely leaves a good taste in your mouth for the game. So yeah, you're loving it.
I'm loving it. I just got all of the 8 protagonists yesterday. Actually, I went through in letter order. So I started with Ophelia and ended with Hannet. And so now I have them all, and I'm doing a little bit of exploration to level a little bit before I go on to their next chapters. And it's so charming, and I love the updated take on a classic style with the, you've got your traditional, 16-bit, I guess, RPG appearance, but updated with, the perspectives and little graphical effects and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I don't... Also probably mentioned this before, I'm not super drawn to 16-bit style graphics. It's a bit of a factor of when I started getting really into games. I played on 16-bit consoles originally, but when I really started getting into gaming was PS1 era and forward.
Really?
So I didn't have as much time to experience classic 16-bit style RPGs. And when I did go back to them, they didn't necessarily grab me as much because I was already kind of used to 3D graphics. So it's kind of can be a challenge for me to go back to older 16-bit RPGs.
That makes sense, I suppose.
So strangely enough, I really love the style of this game, and I would very much love to see older 16-bit RPGs maybe sort of remade in a style like this. I think this is like a really kind of neat compromise between maintaining the look of a classic 16-bit RPG, but giving it enough of an updated flair to make it attractive even by today's standards.
The HD 2D or whatever it's called.
Yes, there we go. That's the 2D 3D. Is that what they called it?
HD 2D or 2D HD. Can't remember which term it is, but it's one of those.
I think you are right on the right track with that, though. For me, the one that comes to mind immediately is that, and because the aesthetic of this game still had a bit of that kind of dark, vibrant at moments appeal, that Final Fantasy VI would be a front runner for this style of remake.
Oh,
Yes.
that would be great.
I would be all
That'd be
over
amazing.
Final Fantasy VI getting remade using this engine. It would be fantastic.
I mean, we can wish, and I doubt they will do it, but it would be really neat if they were able to pull it off. For me, I find it's clear this team has been building games in this kind of format, because it's the same kind of team that's done Bravely Default and everything like that, correct?
Yes, it's the Bravely team. With help from Acquire, I believe. Acquire is the other studio that helped out with this game.
So you can see those roots even from back with Final Fantasy. Is it 4 Warriors of Light? Or the 4 Heroes?
Yes, I want to say yes.
Final Fantasy 4 Heroes, I think is what it is. Was very much, the aesthetic of it was very much a storybook, kind of that pop-up vibe. And it looked great in that. And they've gone through Bravely Default, Bravely Second, which both still played back to those roots from the 4 Warriors. 4 Heroes. And now you have this, which is the epitome of like a pop-up book come to life in a video game form. And the appeal of it is what I want to dive into, is just how great it looks with these graphics. And my words are failing me in so many ways to express myself on this. There's that game that came out on the PlayStation 3 as a launch title, 3D Dot Hero? Game Hero?
3D Dot Game Heroes, yeah.
3D Dot Game Heroes. And it feels kind of like that, just brought to an even better degree. And I just loved what that game was doing of meshing the 3D world with the 2D world and making them pop out in a modern way, but still keeping the retro vibe. And this game just does that in aces. And then when you even are in like combat, those sprites when you're battling the monsters and stuff are definitely harken back to Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI at the height of Square's kind of sprite game on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's just done so well. I mean, all of it is done so well, especially in the combat system. With once you get a full party and you can start mixing and matching their skills and what they can exploit as far as enemy weaknesses are concerned. I haven't even gotten to the point where I can start unlocking the extra jobs, so I'm looking forward to that and how that's going to allow me to mix things up with regard to who I field. But even, I mean, just at the basics of the system, it's all of it feels like a love letter to classic JRPGs and that sort of experience. But, you know, with a modern, updated twist or shine to it to, you know, let it run a bit more smoothly and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. And we've talked about it on the podcast too, so I know this isn't new to many of our listeners. But still, if there's anyone having any doubt about picking it up, you know, it's got, even a year later, almost, it's got Caitlin seal of approval for sure.
Yes.
Nathan, did you jump in on Octopath back when it first came out?
I actually reviewed it for RPG fans, so I'm familiar
Oh,
with
there you
it.
go.
No, Octopath Traveler is a really great game, and if you're a fan of RPGs of any kind, you should pick this up for your Switch.
Well, now that we've established you've both gone through it. Caitlin, who's your favorite of the protagonists?
I really like Therion so far. I like his kind of deadpan snark. And his voice actor, I think, does a good job. Let's see, who else? Tressa is adorable, and I kind of cannot not like her spunk. I like H'aanit. I'm not sure that I'm sold on
Her
her
speech.
yeah. It's interesting. I think the thing that is kind of the weirdest to me is the adding the en to some of the words. Everything else is fine because it sounds Old English style, but the he walk in the forest and then fall in like that sounds a little awkward. But I mean, I'll get used to it. It's just one chapter that I've gone through so far, so
I did the H'aanit chapter, or started it a bit when I got the demo. And as someone who is, an actor who's definitely been a trained thespian in many productions and acted in a few Shakespeare shows, and I am going to be marrying someone who is, for lack of a better term, a Shakespeareophile, there's certain times where their very clunky attempt at Old English Shakespearean kind of wordplay made me very angry. Like saying like the weird, like, I'm going to add an en to it or something and make this unnecessary. And I question how much research was done into that, if they are looking at a really old form of Old English, or there was someone who's just like, yeah, I read Shakespeare in high school. I can make this stuff up. It's like none of this. I mean, it doesn't have to be an iambic pentameter per se, because no one talked like that, of course. But at least use the wordplay properly, and you can't just go around throwing an odd thine and eth and whatever on everything to make it sound Old English. And if my partner ever gets to it, I can imagine the fury that she will have as well.
See, that would have been really cool if instead of just throwing in the weird, thou dost and fallen and whatnot, if they had done something interesting with the meter of everything that the people in that village say.
That would have been fascinating.
Putting it in iambic pentameter, or doing something like Zero from Borderlands, who only speaks in haikus.
Oh yeah.
Like, that would have been ridiculously difficult, especially to, if it was, I don't know how it would have worked if it was in the original Japanese and then localized, or, even just in the localization. That would have been obviously probably difficult, but it would have been really cool if it wasn't just we're going to add letters to otherwise normal English speech, but we're actually going to change somehow the kind of the grammar or the syntax or the meter of how these people speak to make them seem different.
Well, it's a fact of life that different ways of people speaking, even our own English language, has progressed in such a way to where it is now that people speak it differently in different not rhyming patterns, but different meter and patterns of speech. That if you were to go back and listen to Old English, not only just the words they use and everything would change, but how they say it, the rhythm and pace at which they say it would be incredibly different as well. Mm-hmm. And you can just see it even worldwide. Like, there are certain languages that come out and sounding very lyrical and sing-songy, whereas others are just straightforward and abrupt. And they definitely couldn't have gotten away with saying, like, oh yeah, this whole village, they speak in iambic pentameter because the way they use English is more lyrical, more poetic. Whereas everybody else is much more straightforward with their English language because it's more common in business and, used globally in this world. I think they could have done it, and I think that would have been a much better use of it for sure. All that being said, derailing-wise, Nathan, what were your protagonists of choice?
Well, of choice, like, you mean for my party, or just, like, characters I just liked in general?
Option 2.
Characters I liked. I think one of my favorite was probably Tressa, then followed by Primrose. Then, who else did I really enjoy? Kind of like Cyrus, a little bit. Even though
he's so clueless.
I know, he always dances a rock.
Cyrus is the warrior?
He's the scholar.
The scholar.
Oh, yes, the scholar. Who's a clueless scholar?
Yes. Well, clueless in the way of attraction and women.
Oh, okay, so he's book smart, but not intuitive and worldly.
Yeah, there's two students who are clearly pining over him, and he has no idea it's happening until one of the girls just basically gets him fired from the academy.
Did she pull some classic Indiana Jones action with "Love You" on her eyelids?
No, it was more like she got jealous that she was she was focusing attention on one of the other girls instead of her. So she's basically just went to the headmaster and just like, Cyrus did this thing or something like that. I can't quite remember what it was.
Rude.
I think it was that he was being improper with one of his students is the princess of the kingdom that
Oh right,
he's
that's what
in.
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she thought it was favoritism.
So accusations were flung at him.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Octopath is also on my backlog. I plan to get to it as soon as I can, but with stuff that kind of built up over this past year and with projects taken on here, it has slipped down as a priority for myself. But it looks so darn good, and I was sad I didn't have a Switch at the time it came out.
And it sounds darn good. The soundtrack, like, I'd almost say, even if you're not at all into classic 16-bit RPGs, or even RPGs at all, it's still worth checking out simply because the soundtrack is amazing.
The soundtrack is so good.
I've been enjoying it. I am technically supposed to be reviewing it. I've just been slow to get to it, and I've listened to it a bunch. My problem with it, though, which may be an unpopular opinion with the soundtrack, is not that it's not good. It's a fantastic soundtrack, but I find out of context, like just as listening music, the loops are so short, which I found surprising, which means in-game I'm sure it's fine, but it gets really repetitive because they go through the loops like 2 or 3 times on the soundtrack just when you're just listening to it before it heads over to the next track. And some tracks I find don't lend very well to, like, after the first loop, you're just like, oh, okay, I could have used a variation or something. Whereas other ones, I'm like, yeah, I can jam to this for a while. But I feel in the context of the game, when you're just lost in the world, it'll blend in perfectly and totally suits the return to form of the 16-bit era of music, where, yeah, they didn't have as much space to play with, so the loops were a little tighter and just there to add ambiance and build tension and emotion and service the wordplay that where they couldn't with voice acting.
Yeah.
So I think they did a great job with the soundtrack in that regard, and again, the full orchestration of it and the performances of it is fantastic. It struck me as odd that in this day and age they went with such a tight loop pattern.
I didn't necessarily get that so much. Some tracks I agree. There are a couple tracks where it looped faster than I thought, and then of course some of the tracks are short on purpose. They're like the
motifs,
the pre-battle tracks. Yeah. Oh, and the motifs at the end. They're definitely not lengthy loops by any stretch of the imagination.
No, most of the battles get most of that, which I understand because that's probably where the most protracted gameplay happens, and they need to heighten the action.
But it's impressive considering, I think for most of us, Yasunori Nishiki wasn't known, really. I didn't know about him until this soundtrack, and I think hopefully the popularity of the soundtrack and the game and its reception will sort of maybe skyrocket him a little bit more into doing more and more things, because I'd like to hear more music from him. It's definitely impressive what he does with the soundtrack, considering that he has to think about 8 different character themes that are referenced in multiple different places, the intro to the boss battle themes that are unique for each character and all have to transition into multiple battle themes, both in terms of key and rhythm. That's impressive. And he does some really cool things with regard to key shifts throughout the soundtrack. There are some YouTube videos that you can check out that talk about that. That was really, it's an avenue of composition that I don't think gets talked about a whole lot. I know I myself don't necessarily even think about it. It's kind of one of those natural things that we hear key changes and it just sort of, oh, it's a key change, but it's cool.
Key changes are super satisfying, but you definitely hear more about them in a bigger deal about them in like musical theater and stuff like that, because that's where you really recognize when, a soloist shifts things and starts harmonizing in a different way, and you're just like, oh, I feel that, but yeah, you can take for granted in just background music, so to speak.
So it's good music. Everyone should listen to it, is what I think.
Listen to it, play it, get on that. I need to be not so slow at getting to it either. I definitely bought my Switch, the Switch was a family gift, but I wanted to buy a Switch specifically for this game, and I still haven't even gotten around to it. But I also really wanted to play Breath of the Wild, so right now while I'm diving into that, that's kind of the game that's demanding the most of my attention.
It's not a bad game to demand your attention.
No, it's very satisfying.
You're doing it right.
I'd say it was a good day one purchase as soon as we got our Switch, that Annette and I were both just like, we want this, right? Cool. Committed. So we've both been enjoying diving into it. It's just fun just to be like, I want to go over there. And then you do it. and then you find a cool thing, or see a dragon flying through the sky, or find some monsters to fight. Like, it's super neat. As far as going on with stuff, I've been diving into Wargroove, which released on February 1st from Chucklefish.
Mhm.
And it's super awesome. Have either of you two been big on the Advance Wars series?
I've never played an Advance Wars game.
So that's pretty big back in the day, but I've been waiting for a new one, waiting for Intelligent Systems to take a little bit of a break from Fire Emblem and do Advance Wars again. But so I got Wargroove actually myself yesterday, but I don't have much time to put into it yet.
And well, Caitlin, you do like your strategy RPGs, though. We know this.
I do, and I've been interested in Wargroove. I just haven't gotten around to my backlog is kind of ridiculous right now.
No, it's totally fair, and again,
Yeah.
it's a good problem to have too many games.
Yes.
But you definitely have to pick and choose where to use your time, and also balancing it with real life. It would be so easy to dive into the backlog and just say buy everything and then not have a life outside of gaming, because there's just so much to play and experience there. But finances and life and all that stuff kind of takes precedence, and responsibility. All that being said, Wargroove is definitely a great game to dive into, and yeah, Nathan will talk more about this, I'm sure, at some point in the future. And Caitlin, if you like your strategy RPGs, as I know you do, you probably will dig this.
I also like dogs, and I hear and have seen that there are dogs in this game.
There is.
Good dogs.
Very good dogs. There's Caesar, who is the trusted dog companion of who was at the beginning of the game Princess Mercia, who becomes queen very quickly throughout the opening tutorial mission, which is great, but also makes you feel terrible because you play as one of the bad guys, but it's what gives you a bit of basic exposition into the world and teaches you how the basic systems of their strategy RPG works, and you kind of find out that you're going to war against Felheim, which is basically ruled by this human named Valder who can raise the dead, so they have undead armies of vampires and skeletons and all that sort of stuff. And you very quickly embark on this task with Emmerich, who's Mercia's trusted advisor, and then Caesar. Caesar is delightful as a leader, because like in Advance Wars, you have all your different commanders, which sometimes for the main campaign were mission specific. They would give you certain ones. In this one, throughout the main game, you largely are playing as Mercia, and I've had a couple missions where it jumps over to Emmerich, and I'm assuming there'll be more that'll bounce amongst your commanders that you acquire as you go through the game. But you do get to play as Caesar, and around Chapter 2, there's some side missions that splinter off that kind of give you a little opportunity to unlock the codex and get to know more about the game and the world and the characters in it, and also unlocks characters for the arena play. And the first side mission you get is Caesar gets separated from you in the woods, and so stumbles upon this fort where some outlaws have taken people hostage, and Caesar, in his quiet barking command of his troops, communicates to them that he wants to set these prisoners free. So his troops are like, let's follow Caesar into battle. Which I think even in the opening of his little codex entry, it says that he leads with a quiet dignity. And he's just the most noble looking dog with his armor and everything. And he has, when you go into battle, he has his own personal guard of these 2 crossbow people. So whenever you get into the kind of Advance Wars style battle where you see your side on the left, the other on the right, they engage and attack. Caesar's at the front, he barks, gives an order, and then hops behind them, and then will chase his tail or roll over on his back or something adorable dog-like while they do the fighting for him.
Oh my gosh.
Right? And his each commander has what's called a groove, so over time you build it faster by taking damage and dealing damage, but it will just passively go up as well, and then you get your groove, which is essentially their ultimate of some sort. So Mercia can heal a bunch of her troops around her. Emmerich raises what's called a cherry stone, which is just this magic crystal that anyone in the aura of it gets a huge boost to their defense. And Caesar can inspire his troops by howling, where they basically get a second attack, an extra turn. So that's fantastic. On top of Caesar, though, one of the troops that you get in the early missions are called battle pups? War pups. They're called war pups.
Seriously?
Right?
Oh my gosh. I need this game.
They're little canines in armor that go out and attack. They're good for scouting, so certain missions will have fog of war, and because they can use their sniffers, they're great at sniffing things out, and obviously higher ground gives them an advantage, so you put them in mountains and stuff, they can scout out further. And again, every troop has its things that it's stronger against and weaker against. And yeah, war pups are good against some of the basic troops. But I also love the fact that the game catered to the fact that, or acknowledged the fact that people don't want to see dogs getting hurt. So with most things, when you attack and you kill them, you see the troops fall and that's that. But when you attack the war pups, you know, they whimper, but when they quote unquote one would die, they just turn tail and run away.
Oh, good.
Right? Because you know no one was going to respond well to watching you just like murder dogs.
Yeah, no.
Now, every time in a game where you can like be mean to a dog, I feel horrible. I accidentally, I think, kicked a dog in Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh,
The first time I ran into one, because of course the control scheme in that game is horrible and it's impossible sometimes to figure out what does what. So I just pushed the wrong button and I kind of kicked him a little bit, and he was like, you know, I felt so bad. I was like, no, I didn't mean it.
And you know, they got like some sort of canned Dolby for this dog just to be like, "Arr!" And it just tears at your heartstrings. And it's similar in this, but I just love the fact that they just made these dogs run away as opposed to actually seeing them like fall under a hail of arrows or something. They're just like, nope, I'm out. You can summon me again later. And yeah, as for Caesar, he just kind of whimpers, and then he'll do the same sort of idea if you manage to lose your commander. So yes, good doggos in this game. Definitely going to be joining the ranks of our Game Dogs of the Year article that we had. But yeah, game's really, really great. Like, I'm sure Nathan already picked it up, and Caitlin, you've been interested in it. You can see how stylish it is.
Yeah.
Like, Chucklefish definitely has a pedigree for bringing great graphical fidelity to their kind of retro stylized games, and this one is no stranger to that. Like, it looks gorgeous. The maps are awesome. The animations of each of the sprites are just so well detailed, and they tend to convey well enough in the storytelling. They just use kind of like their static battle animations, which can be a little distracting to see these troops engaged in a very serious conversation as they like bounce around in their idle animation. Everyone just looks real Jones to be talking, but otherwise, they just look really polished, and like the opening cutscene's really neat. And I love that the main protagonist is like this rough and tumble princess who's been like training as a warrior her whole life and now kind of has to step into the mantle of being queen and help save her people. She's not automatically good at everything she does, you know, so you have to go through the process of learning how to command the army, and she second guesses as is necessary because it kind of was a sudden thing. But I like the way her character is being developed, and I like the way the entire world is developed in this game, because as you unlock the codex, you can tell that they put so much thought into each aspect of the world's mythos. Like, there's a lot of depth to this entire environment they've built that you could run a D&D campaign in this place with how much they've given to each thing. And they've done a good job of circumventing preconceptions. There's like a race that you come across early on of kind of like tree people. They're like sprites of the forest. And conversely to how you usually kind of picture like elves and forest people to be like one with nature and peace-loving and tribal and such like that, and skittish around people. These ones, that race is inherently violent.
Oh.
So, like, they're all about the hunt and attacking things, and it takes a special kind of leader that tempers the entire population to temper their violence into positive things and to help it be controlled and not just let them riot throughout the woods and murder everything in sight, as is their instinctual need. So I thought that was kind of neat, because I just was not expecting that when I first encountered that race. But beyond those differences, each of the commanders has their own powers, and as you unlock commanders from each of the different races that you can play with in arcade, that's about where the difference lies, because the troops themselves are all just kind of palette swaps. It's not like the forest people get a benefit from their troops being positioned in forests or anything, which would have been neat, but maybe we'll get that in Wargroove 2 as they move along. Like, they'll get more racial benefits on top of what the troops already offer, so that can have a big play in online competitive play and stuff like that you want to take the tree people if you know you're going to do a tree map, or the Floran, I think is what they're called now, if I'm getting the right words, where you want the humans just because you want something that's good all around. But otherwise, it's just like, do you want blue, green, yellow, or red? And do you want your soldiers to look like skeletons or humans or, so. Not that there's anything wrong, because again, each sprite is intricately detailed and you can tell that where they're from and who they are and all that stuff. So that aspect is neat, but it just would have been cool to see. I'm a sucker for any game that has multiple races and where the race matters.
Yeah.
In terms of how it affects stats and in-game interaction and stuff like that. I mean, D&D is key for that, of course, and then trickling down to other things. Because Caitlin, being our 14 aficionado, the races don't really do much in that, eh?
No, they have next to nothing. Minor stat differences, but ultimately
I think that's what I've heard.
Doesn't really do much of anything to change how your performance in the game.
It's largely just cosmetic.
Yeah.
Which, again, it's cool. It's nice to have options, and you want to play as a cat person, go for it. You want to be a Lalafell?
Lalafell. Yes, the potatoes.
Which is rad. I mean, I like being a monk Lalafell and punching stuff while being tiny. But it would just be really neat if they had, more benefits to what they could do or not do. So, slight missed opportunity, but beyond that, it's great. We've had John at the website reviewing it. His review should be coming up shortly, but so far he's been super high on it. Like he's pretty convinced it's one of the best strategy RPGs that's come out in years. And yeah, he has some few minor interfacing issues, which I agree. It is pretty easy to kind of accidentally give the wrong command if you're kind of hastily going through a little too fast. You can accidentally be like, oh, I just ended my turn. Didn't want to do that. Like I find if you try and move a character like in Tactics, if you try and move out of bounds, it just is like, no, you can't, but you can still keep going. Whereas this one, it just outright cancels out and you have to reselect the character and go back in and choose where you want to move it to. So still little quality of life things like that can be annoying, but otherwise it's not the worst. And apparently they're going to be patching those kind of things soon. So it might go back to being a little more seamless, which would be really nice. And it does have a bit of a difficulty spike. I definitely have a few side missions. I'm trying one right now with Caesar, and I just keep getting my butt handed to me.
Sounds like an Advance Wars thing. Or just strategy RPGs in general.
Well, exactly. Like, you're going to have missions that they give you really specific criteria that you got to find the magic puzzle switch, basically, to solve it, whereas other times it's just overrun the enemy and build up your defenses, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Like, I definitely had a match where I was, it took me a good, hour and a half of just, beating on this person to eventually win, but it was dicey, and it would have been such a shame if at the end of it to have it all crumble down and be like, well, there goes all that time I just spent. And he's definitely run into a few of those, he said, but he says few and far between battles, A, of that length, and B, where there's such a specific win-lose scenario that if it can all come crumbling down so quickly with one minor mistake, but there are a few of them that he's just one flaw, and all your investment is gone, which is such a shame.
Yeah.
And so
Sounds like something like that.
Yeah, but thankfully it's minor enough, and because the game would be broken if there was saves coming during the missions, so not an easy thing for them to fix. There's really nothing they can do. It's a strategy RPG, and sometimes strategies fail. It is what it is, really. But by and large, I've been enjoying it. I've played a lot of it in the past day and a bit and talked it up to anyone who wants to hear about it, and if you have a Switch, I definitely recommend this game. It's going to have also a lot of play after the fact with the arcade mode, just if you want to make matches against friends or even locally. And it also has a full suite of custom content where you can build your own maps.
Oh, yes, I heard about that.
Yeah, I haven't gotten into it yet myself. I just saw that it's an option. I don't know if you could build scenarios and stuff as well, if it's just simply you build a map just to go head-to-head on. But I still think that's really rad, and that was some of my favorite parts of even going as far back as StarCraft is building maps. I always loved doing that, and that's how usually we got some of the best custom content that existed in the kind of gameplay. So I'm not sure if they have a way that you can share them online per se, a la Mario Maker and stuff like that, where you can share your levels for people to download and play. That would be very neat. Maybe that'll come later on. I haven't looked too deeply into it, but I still think it's really cool. And I haven't unlocked it yet, but there's a puzzle mode as well, which I assume is just, here's a specific scenario, solve it with the troops you have. I don't know, I always like those challenges where they give you specific limits, and you just have to find the right collection of moves and how to best use your troops. Each troop, too, which is neat, has its own, critical criteria, where they can get critical hits. So, the War Pups, for example, if two of them are basically flanking the enemy, if one pup is adjacent to the one that's attacking, they get a critical bonus. So it usually skyrockets their damage output. Whereas two spearmen, if they're side to side, will give each other a bonus. And archers will get a critical hit if you can hit an enemy without them moving at all first. So stuff like that really lets you inform how you're going to strategize and what kind of troops you're going to put out and how you're going to pair them up. I think that's really neat as well.
Yeah, that's nice, because we've had strategy RPGs that involve things like that, where you can boost damage. Like Jeanne d'Arc had the system where you would attack somebody, and then on the opposite side, a party member can move into that square and then have a bonus damage or whatnot. But it's nice to see them doing that, but having it be, I guess, role or job specific in ways that kind of make sense, maybe for the different kinds of weapons and whatnot that you would be using.
Yeah, because you think of like classic phalanx tactics of having spearmen in a row. That's basically how it worked to make a wall. Whereas dogs are pack hunters, so they'll surround their prey. So yeah, it all makes sense logically for how it is. And your basic swordmen, they get bonuses if they're near your commander. So they get inspired as the most basic troop to be around their leader. I think it's very neat how they've made that work, because that's one thing I always, as much as I love Final Fantasy Tactics, like the only tactics it came down to was just abusing your powers and trying to get behind something to get a higher percentage of success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If there was more like, and I think you got benefit too from higher ground, didn't you?
Tactics, I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, it was very minor, but if you had some sort of benefit of having, two knights next to each other, or if they were closer to Ramza, they would get some sort of, like, a bravery boost or something inherently. Like, all that stuff would have been really neat to see that game develop in that regard. And it's nice to see that brought here.
Well, it sounds great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's, and the portability of it translates well. Like, it looks good on the big screen. It looks good just bringing it around on the Switch itself, so it's just good to have on the console all the time. And it's a pretty small download, which is surprising as well. So it's easy to pick up and play, and I imagine they're going to add more content. Like, this is a game where I can very easily see them adding DLC missions and expanding on the cast and such. So whether we'll get a full sequel or not, or if they'll just kind of build it out for the next year and a bit before working on the next one, I don't know. I haven't finished it yet, so I don't know where the story leaves off. But we'll see John's review, I think, next week. I think he said he was about done the game, so it should be coming up shortly. And there'll be more on that over at the website. Nathan, speaking of reviews, you've been playing Death End Request, which is coming out on February 19th.
Yep.
From Idea Factory International. How's that been going?
It's going all right. I've admittedly not gone as far as I would have liked so far. I've been pretty busy in real life. What I've played so far, it looks to be okay. Like, I'm starting to get the feeling that anything I play from Compile Heart and Ideal Factory, I'm just gonna not enjoy as much as I do with Neptunia. For whatever reason, that series just resonates with me, and nothing else does from Compile Heart.
Isn't Neptunia the one that most people like to?
Yeah, most people like to make fun of it, because like there was a period where the first 3 or so games just were not absolutely terrible, but they were not very good games at all. They haven't, if I were to go back and play them, I probably would hate them at this point. Like, the remakes got better. Like, they've slowly been getting better. Every Neptunia game they've made has slowly been improving on its mechanics and, improving, especially as they moved on to PS4. Now the games actually run properly, because now they can just brute force the engine through instead of to cover up their programming mistakes. But Death End Request, this one's interesting. This one I caught on too early. I got latched onto it just because it's something that you don't usually see. It's very, it's pretty dark, and a lot of the art styles, well, especially when you get what the Death Ends, that's basically what the game is called, the title is from. The art they make for those is actually pretty gory and in nature. Like, the first 2 minutes, the game opens with the main protagonist, or with the main female protagonist. She basically just gets sliced in half, and you just see the nice bottom half of her body just get eaten by monsters. That was fun. The first 2 minutes of the game.
Whoa. That escalates real fast.
Yeah. I don't like the sound of that.
So the premise of the game is that basically this company made a VR MMORPG. Before the game was finished, though, they found too many bugs in the engine, so they had to shut down production. And the game director, the one who was responsible for the engine and everything, she goes missing. And over a year later, they notice that the game service has suddenly come back online, even though they're shut down, and she's stuck in the game as the only player. So that now, since the game has basically bugged out, basically now an AI has taken over the game itself, they have to basically, in order to get her out, they have to try and beat the game, because that was their failsafe in case someone did hack the system, was to have the player beat the game in order to log out, just in case. So that's the only way that now she has to get out. Unfortunately, because the game is so buggy and the game was never finished. Now the game is basically completely messed up. So now basically finishing the game is like almost impossible. So the reason why it's called Death End Request, I assume Request is kind of like a bad English version of going like basically restarting again, because there's I want to say about 15 or 20 bad endings that you can get. So this game will basically be like trying to figure out like how you're going to be able to get to that good ending. So the game does reward you actually with trophies. Like the trophy system in the game, it gives you if you get all the bad endings, then you get whatever gold trophy, I think.
Good for you. You did terribly.
Good for you. You picked all the bad choices. So now I'm like I feel like whenever I play the game, I'm constantly on the edge, like making sure I save a bunch of places, because you can save wherever you want basically in this game. Any dialogue, bit of dialogue, you can save. Just save points spread out throughout the game. No autosave though. I guess that's the reason why to avoid like the saves coming.
Right.
But then the gameplay is interesting. So it's plays more kind of like the Neptunia series, where it's kind of like a little small arena and it's turn based. But what you could do is after 3 successive attacks, you do knockback, and knockback basically makes the enemy fly across the arena, and they can bounce them off walls, off of other characters to do more damage. So that's the kind of interesting system. I kind of like that one.
It's like Children of Mana was like that on the Game Boy Advance or the DS. The DS, where like you could bounce enemies and objects into each other and to kind of knock them off balance, but it's kind of neat that it also benefits you by doing damage and stuff too.
Yeah, so you can knock an enemy, like say you knock him off the wall, then the enemy bounces off the wall, then into one of your characters, they'll continue to knock back, so they'll also like take a swing at the enemy and they'll knock him around again.
So you can juggle?
Yeah, you can do juggles basically. I assume the same thing will happen to your characters if there's ever knockback, but I haven't experienced that just yet, so I don't know if the enemies can do it or not. But that's a neat little mechanic that I kind of enjoy.
Gotcha, so they don't necessarily bounce off you if you don't time it out right.
Some enemies have different weights, so some enemies will get knocked back farther than others. So it's kind of like trying to play a game of like math and angles, so trying to like figure out, okay, if I knock the enemy in this direction, will it be able to bounce off the wall at this angle and then hit one of the other characters who will then bounce it off at this angle, and etc. So
you're playing enemy pool.
Yeah, that's basically what I'd like to call it. That's actually good. That's actually a good term actually. Maybe I should use that for my review. Wait, what I actually want to write it?
Crowd pleaser, enemy pool. Note taken. That's pretty neat. And yeah, because I wasn't sure much about it. I wasn't sure if it was a straight up RPG or a visual novel. I don't know much about either series.
Most Cobalt Hard Idea Factory games are kind of like half RPG, half visual novels. There's a lot of like dialogue in the game. Like the first like opening 5 hours or so, there's a ton of dialogue. I was actually kind of like almost like, well, plus at the beginning, the main female protagonist, Shina Ninomiya, she's kind of like whiny and she always complains a lot. So the first like 3 hours or so, I was completely tuned out because I was like, I don't want to like, she cries like every 2 seconds. And I'm just like, can you please not? Because I don't want to listen to this anymore. But like, she's gotten better. Like for like whatever reason at the start of the game, she has amnesia. And then she gets her memories back after a certain event in the prologue story. So it's getting, like, story's slowly getting better, but the beginning was just, like, pretty hard to get through. That's probably the reason why I've been a bit slow, which is because that was, like it only takes so much of this at the start.
That's kind of unfortunate. And from the sounds of it, like, the game, I'm guessing, focuses heavily on character interaction and relationship building?
A little bit. I assume, like, the dialogue choices that come up in the game and the story will affect something that happens down the road. But right now, like, it's not a huge character interaction story, but what you could do, basically the real world, basically because the main male protagonist, Arata Mizunashi, he's still in the real world, so he can interact with things in the real world in order to, like, help out Shina in the virtual world. So the character the back and forth between, like, reality and the virtual world. So something that Mizunashi discovers in the real world will take out a barrier in Shina's world. And then assumed, like, etc., she needs to find something in the real world for Mizunashi to discover. So it's kind of like this like back and forth between the two.
Gotcha. So it's the game focuses largely on the story development and the escape, I guess, then.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds neat. And yeah, so far you're digging it.
Yeah, I think it'll be alright. I don't know, like I said, I don't know if I'll love it as much as Neptunia. Probably won't, but so far it's not too bad.
Well, that's good to hear. Thanks for sharing on that. So as far as other new games coming out, The Division had a is it an open beta or is it alpha? Where is it at, Caitlin?
It was a private beta.
Private beta. How did you get in on the private beta?
I had a friend who believe is pre-ordered. People who pre-ordered, I believe, got in, and other people could register for a chance to get in. And anyone who got in could. It was kind of like the Anthem VIP demo, where you got like free 3 friend codes you could send to other people so they could play with you. So friend got me in, and I checked it out on PS4.
The Division 2, to be clear.
Division 2, yeah. Yes. Yeah, I did play the Division 1 beta way back in the day, so... So The Division, for those who aren't familiar with the series, it's a tactical, for a third-person shooter RPG, sensibly set in the Tom Clancy universe. It's got the Tom Clancy sort of moniker in the title. The original game is set Christmas time in New York City after a pandemic hits and spreads like wildfire over Black Friday. And you play an agent. You play an agent in the Division, which is this this sort of made up special ops group in the military or whatnot that gets sent in to try and take control of the situation, because obviously things have gone completely crazy. People looting, taking advantage, gangs, taking over stuff and whatnot, to try and take control and also try and find a cure, if you can, for this disease. The Division 2 is set after that, and from what I can tell, it's like things did not get better. It's set in Washington, D.C. this time during the summer. And it's basically it's a wasteland that's overrun by gang lords and various other not nice people that are trying to, basically control everything. And the people that are not gang lords or bad people are just trying to eke a living. And you are sent in, I guess, to kind of deal with the gangs and try to return control to I don't know who. It's a very bare bones kind of setting. The opening cutscene kind of reads more like an ad for, like you see those Air Force ads and whatnot on TV. So, and it's par for the course, because the story in the original Division was also very, very bare bones, pretty much just existed to funnel you from point A to point B. And that certainly seems to be the case here with what they showed us in the beta. So the focus is much more on exploring the chunk of the city that they give you, running quests, grabbing loot, and upgrading your gear. And eventually, when you feel like it, you can go into the dark zones, which are the PvP-enabled parts of the map, where anyone can shoot you if they so desire there, including other players. Or you can team up and take on NPCs or other player teams together and whatnot. It can look nice. I had a lot of problems on PS4 where assets took forever to load in. So textures would be incredibly blurry for several seconds before they would finally resolve into something I could actually read or look at. There were instances where there were actually textures just missing. So, like, for instance, we went to do a side mission in the National Archives. It was a mission to rescue the Declaration of Independence, if you can believe it or not. We went very national treasure kind of with that mission.
Did you have to recruit Nicolas Cage for it too?
No, unfortunately we didn't. Should have. It was a missed opportunity.
How great a call-out would that have been?
Awesome. I love that movie so much. We need a third movie in the series, please. But there were things where, like, the building was actually missing parts of the building, so you could see through into nothing. So, I mean, other, various things like that. We got disconnected a bunch. It was a beta, so it's to be expected that things aren't running super as well as they could be, and hopefully the final version of the game, which comes out next month, will be cleaned up. Other than that, like, it still very much felt like The Division, what I remember of playing the original game. You have some cool new toys that you can use at your disposal. Things like, there were turrets in the first game, but turrets that can do different things. I had a drone that would follow me and just constantly replenish my health as long as it was up, which was kind of nice.
That's so bizarre to think of in, like, a reality-based game context. Because, I mean, you get it with magic, with having some sort of magical thing giving you magical healing aura, but, like, is this drone just constantly, like, sticking you with needles? How is it doing this to you?
It's, no, it's like over the air kind of stuff. It tethers to you or another person on your team, and it just, like, shoots you health and armor over the air, I guess.
Inhaling healing mist.
It's a bit of a suspension of disbelief. The Division is supposed to be kind of like this technologically advanced sort of group of agents, so they have lots of cool. Yeah, they have lots of cool little toys. Like they wear these super watches that light up, and I'm not sure if the lore is that the watch is supposed to let you do augmented reality things. It's like the original game announcement trailer, which didn't quite make it into the final build of the game, but the announcement trailer of the game had you actually bringing up the map on the surrounding environment so that you could sort of like augmented reality style. That's not quite that way in the original Division, and it's not quite that way in Division 2, but they've got some cool tech to play with. So I guess that's where they're coming from with letting you use all these sort of high-powered devices. Although, I mean, we have drones, we have various different technological, mechanical devices that can be used in combat. So it's trying, I think, to sort of semi-ground it, but it's a game.
Exactly.
They want things to be cool.
Yeah, it's going to be neat. It's just one of those things that when you take a second to think about the practical application of that in today's technology and world, it's just, I just imagine you just being constantly stuck with healing needles of something to heal you, or them just constantly slapping band-aids on you with little mechanical arms. I don't know. It's dumb
That'd be
thoughts.
So cute.
It would be really adorable.
Yeah.
Get over here, Healbot. I have a band-aid for you. Would you like Polysporin? So dumb. Anyways.
So I didn't do everything in the beta. Honestly, the first night that I tried getting into it, I got disconnected a bunch, and they apparently did address that, but I was a little turned off by it after having similar issues with the Anthem, both weekends of the Anthem demo. So I didn't do everything. I did not go into the Dark Zone. They did, later on in the weekend, they allowed people to experience the end game content that's going to be in the full game, which I also did not do, but I've checked out what they're planning for that. And it actually does sound kind of cool. So what's going to happen is you have certain factions that you fight against as you're leveling in the game, and then once you hit the level cap, apparently a totally new faction will roll in and be present if you like replay content. I think it's if you do missions or if you're exploring or whatnot, and they play differently. They have different tactics. They have different enemy types, in addition to like having more health or hitting harder or whatnot. So it sounds like it's an interesting way to keep the content interesting and engaging even once you've hit level cap. So that's promising. Personally, I'm not picking this game up. I bounced off the original Division super hard, and I didn't see anything in this beta that really made me feel like, oh, I kind of want to give this a second chance. But endgame content in any kind of game that has like online play and a continuing sort of play experience, MMOs, that kind of thing, that's always kind of the big challenge, is how do we keep giving people things to do once they've technically finished the main story of the game. And so this sounds like an interesting sort of answer to that solution, instead of just the sort of, oh, well, we'll give them an extra hard difficulty setting to play it on. So I look forward to seeing how that actually plays out. I mean, I look forward to hearing people's accounts of how that plays out in practice.
Yeah, it sounds like a much better way to freshen up the system and give you an alternate method, I guess, of tackling a scenario, instead of just being flooded with more of the same, and like you said, just at a harder difficulty, having you actually have to think outside the box and relearn how this enemy reacts as opposed to how the last one did, is actually really clever.
Yeah, so I hope it works well. Like I said, I'm not going to be checking it out, so this is probably about as much. There's going to be an open beta the first weekend of March, I believe. So open to everybody, and I might I might check it out again on PC. They're just to see how it runs on my system than out of any real interest. But it looks like if you really liked The Division, if it was your jam, this is simultaneously both more Division, but I think they've also mixed things up enough, or at least they've tried to mix things up a little bit. So if you like The Division, you'll probably will like this. If you didn't like the original Division, honestly, I don't know that there's much here that's going to change your mind. It didn't change my mind from coming from the original game, so take that as you will.
Does it play like Borderlands and such, like as an FPS, or is it you have a squad that you command? I can't remember how the gameplay works in this game.
It's a third-person shooter. It's much more tactical than Borderlands games in that style.
Handles like Mass Effect.
Yeah, it's a cover-based shooter. So if you're not a fan of the Mass Effect style of there's always convenient, waist-high cover everywhere, then yeah. Although it's not, that might be being unfair to The Division. It's not designed simply to be like a Mass Effect style clone. It's just that they're both cover-based third-person shooters.
Yeah, and like with any of those Gears of War, Army of Two, all that stuff, they unfortunately need to justify the mechanic working all the time.
Yeah, but it's also, you can play it solo. Things will obviously get harder for you if you do, but the game it's ideally probably designed to be played with a buddy or a couple of buddies in a squad. That's where you can really take advantage of communication and your different abilities to sort of manage the enemies. Oh, and I guess there are apparently going to be classes in this game, which I stopped playing the original game pretty soon after it came out. I don't know if this is something that they added to the original Division or if this is totally new for the Division 2, but there are going to be, I guess, specializations that do different things, not simply like you wear different equipment and that changes your stats. It's actually going to be more like actual classes or specializations that might I'm not entirely certain like what the breadth, the range is going to be and how different they're going to feel, but it's nice to see that they're actually trying to throw in some options to make your character unique and have a unique function compared to your friend's character, and beyond just like, hey, I have this super cool gun or this really powerful piece of armor that makes me invincible or something like that.
I mean, throwing back to something that either of you may or may not have played, like Modern Warfare 2, I think is one of the only ones I really played, but like being able to build your own class essentially is definitely what made that game fun, and trying to figure out ways to make your own personal army of one different from the next person's and how it will complement the team, how you build your sniper differently or your melee fighter, whatever. I think it's a nice thing to find a way to bring that to games like this. So yeah, it's not all about just do the most shooting and with the biggest gun. Yeah. Whether they'll have a whole skill tree or whatever, like you can be a better medic, revive your allies faster, squad mechanics of adding boosts and stuff like that could be really neat.
Yep. So it's a thing. Like I said, if you like the original, you probably want to check this one out. If you didn't, I don't think it'll change your mind.
Are you checking this game out, Nathan?
I may. I was kind of sour on the first Division, but hearing Kayla talk about it, I may be able to check this one out. But we'll see. There's so many other games to play, so I don't know if I'll be able to do this one.
Yeah, the next couple of months are packed, and then the summer is becoming packed.
Yeah,
and then
the summer is going to be ridiculous from what I've seen.
And it's, I don't know, it's if there's something you would really, really want to play, why would you spend your time when there's already so much to do and so little time for it on something that you're like, maybe I'll try this.
Yeah. And
I know it's hard because developers are definitely trying to get gamers to hedge their bets and try their game out and see if they'll fall in love with it.
Yeah.
So it's hard on them when we decide to go like, no, I'm going to go with the sure thing I know I like, that I've always tried and trued, and I'm not going to go with this thing that's outside the box of my usual repertoire. But the fact of the matter is, time is precious. Almost as precious as the money we spend on these games. So if you're not that invested out the get-go, then why bother?
Yeah.
Speaking of the busy summer, I think a lot of that can be blamed on the recent Nintendo Direct that just came out.
Oh, yes.
Because they announced a lot of stuff, and a lot of that stuff is coming up this summer. As during the Direct, our Slack channel was blowing up with people with reactions, and Mike Solosi, I can specifically remember having a lot of like, well, there goes my bank account in the summer.
Yeah, it's basically me too.
Me 3.
And I'm not going to lie, me 4. So there's a lot that's going to be coming up to play. And yeah, they announced a whole hit list of some real great stuff RPG-wise that's coming to the Switch as well. I don't think it's curious at all that they really mentioned nothing for the 3DS. Although that being said, was this Direct advertised as being specifically just a Switch Direct?
I don't remember.
Yeah. Because I know sometimes they'll do like, this Direct is like a Smash Direct, or this Direct is going to be literally just about this, but it's a Nintendo Direct that covers these subjects, and I can't remember if this one was touted as being just Switch.
I'm pretty sure they just said Switch, and then the feature on Fire Emblem Heroes, three houses.
Okay. So then, yeah, that's not like they were saying we're done with the 3DS, it's just this one wasn't covering anything for the 3DS. Okay. Yeah. So we had a lot of good RPGs, though, either way, all covering things on the Switch. And Fire Emblem Three Houses was the big hit that's coming out for July 26th. Kaylin, you were saying you're pretty keen on some Fire Emblem Three House action?
Yeah,
Hogwarts.
Yes, it's basically Fire Emblem Hogwarts. It looks really cool. The sort of the first Fire Emblem on the Switch, and taking advantage of the Switch's more powerful system and higher resolution and whatnot. So it's interesting. So they sort of gave everyone a preview to the world of this game and the setting. So you're set in this land that is split up between 3 kingdoms. That's where the 3 houses are kind of coming from. You are with a band of mercenaries that eventually, through circumstances, becomes a teacher or professor at this school called Garreg Mach Monastery to teach, I guess, warfare. It's not clear exactly what you're teaching, but it's probably going to be teaching combat and warfare and stuff like that.
Seems likely.
Yeah.
Yeah, likely.
And at the school, there are members from all 3 of those countries that make up this continent, and they each belong to a different house, and that's where those 3 houses are coming from. One of which I guess you will choose to be their teacher or something else. It's not quite clear what that means. We just know that you get to choose one of the houses, and I guess that might mean that limits the characters that you get to play with in combat and whatnot. As long as it's not a return to the Fates crap where you had to actually buy different versions of the game in order to play.
Yeah, if you have to buy all 3 houses, that'll be awful.
I don't think they're doing that again.
Yeah, I think they learned from Fates not to do that. So good. Everything looks like, they've upgraded sort of the visual appearance of the game, obviously, for Switch, and combat the basics are still there, like in terms of movement and things like that, but it looks like it's been heavily upgraded in terms of presentation for being on Switch. We know already that they've taken an effort to like have more units on the screen with you when you're in combat, so it's not just one archer taking on one opponent and whatnot. It'll look a bit more like an actual battlefield with lots of people. But it was just a very brief overview. They didn't really go into depth explaining the combat system. It was more just a montage of images. So there's clearly a lot more that they will have to talk about in the coming months as to how it works, how much or to what extent it's changed compared to classic Fire Emblem, if it's more of a graphical overhaul than any sort of mechanical overhaul. But you can also apparently, I guess, walk around the school grounds and talk to your students, and you can choose lesson plans for them and coach them or help them as they take their exams, which may be how they change classes, I suppose. It looked like it might have something to do with how you can choose new classes for your units.
Which is nice to have that flexibility.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it looks pretty. I'm interested in it. I think we're all kind of excited of the potential sort of like Hogwarts kind of thing going on there. The male protagonist, if you choose to play as a guy, looks very Snape-like, kind of. He's got the robes and everything, and sort of the dour kind of look on his face. So I mean, I'm interested in it. Maybe it might not be everyone's cup of tea if they're kind of tired of the school setting, but it remains to be seen how much of the game is really going to be in that school setting, if it's going to be the entire game or if something's going to happen midway through that will change things up.
Yeah, or if that's the way of the
Yeah, sure.
I have to say, I absolutely hate the look of the female protagonist.
She's got pink hair?
It's so the guy is wearing a full robe and, I don't know, weird kind of cape thing, and his arms are completely covered and have armor. She is wearing what looks like some sort of horrible bustier that makes her chest look gigantic, or, well, it's probably that her chest is gigantic, but then the outfit also makes it look huge. Her navel is showing. She's wearing hot shorts, hot pants, and she's wearing tights, like, you know, stylized tights under that. And her arms conspicuously have, like, whereas his arms are covered, her arms are exposed with the exception of, like, an elbow pad or whatnot. It's so bad.
That's not Sothis, though.
No. That's the female, the your unit, my unit character that you can choose.
Or the avatar, I guess you can call it.
Sothis also looks, I mean, I need to see a full shot of her. She doesn't look like the worst I've seen, but I need to see the whole design before I judge her super badder. But yeah,
It's a very justified complaint, and I mean, and even then you can carry that down to even the three house leaders, you know, because it's just kind of funny that they're just like, obvious American white guy, white girl to fit into the girl minority, and then obvious ambiguous visible ethnic minority guy. And it's just, you know, I'm glad that they're trying to cater to all that stuff too, but it just seems very safe, for lack of a better term.
We'll see what they do with the characters, and
we need to see more of the characters too.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
all I know
For
is
sure.
For the first time, I might actually be playing a male protagonist. I usually always play a female protagonist if I'm given the option. But here, I don't know if you can't change their outfit or if their outfits remain the same, even if you class them up like they have in previous Fire Emblems. I'm not going to play as her.
No, that's totally fair.
As long as they stick to like previous games, you should be able to change the characters' outfits and at least their looks in general. Hopefully, anyway.
Yeah, and again, it'll all work out to be probably a really great game, and despite all that, and I mean, I'm not trying to be too critical and reductive of these characters and their looks. Like, it's great that any of these are showing any representation in this from what it could have been. So I'm glad that that's there, and yeah, it's good that you have the option of playing a male and female protagonist, but it is a little off-putting that it's such a jarring change in costuming for simply just having an appeal of let's make the male badass and the female attractive.
It's unfortunately kind of big, you know, it's par for the course in some respects with video games, but
Yeah. That being said, I do hope it at some point came up in some production meeting where someone was just like, let's make the male snapely and the female shapely. I apologize. I will leave the podcast now, everybody.
That's gonna go somewhere, like it's gonna go on to like a, I don't know, a blog post or a review somewhere.
You can quote me on that, GameSpot. Anyways. But that's cool. It seems like the first Fire Emblem that I could end up picking up myself. Fire Emblem is a series I've always been interested in and wanted to try out because I do, as we've just discussed, love my strategy RPGs, and I like the relationship building mechanics of it. And I got not necessarily like the hard mode of it, but just if you have permadeath on, like having those choices have that weight just seems very appealing. But I just have never taken the time to get into it. But this one definitely looks really awesome. How about you two? Are you jonesing for this in July?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. My concerns about some of the character design aside, it looks beautiful. It looks, you know, like Fire Emblem on a more modern console, thank God. So I'm down for it. And I'm looking forward to July.
What about you, Nathan? What's your hit from the direct news?
My hit for me was I was actually streaming my direct actually on the RPG Fan Twitch when the direct was live, and if you were watching, I absolutely freaked out when Rune Factory 4 and 5 were announced. The Rune Factory 4, Rune Factory 4 is one of my favorite 3DS games, so that just made me extremely happy to see that.
But yeah, they're porting that from the 3DS up to the Switch.
Yeah.
With from the video, does there a quality change in like texture work and everything too? Since you've played
A little bit, yeah. They've upgraded the resolution. I don't know if they changed the textures, which is a little bit unfortunate because it's going to look a little bit dated. But for me, I'm interested to see what they do with the added content, because they added a newlywed episode. That's what they called it.
Yeah, I love that. It's just like, it's Rune Factory 4, but now with marital bliss.
Oh, Rune Factory games have always had that. Like, Rune Factory 4, part of the reason why I love it so much is because the romance in the game was actually a lot better than in previous ones, where previous ones was basically, let me give you your favorite thing for like a year, and then you'll fall in love with each other and marry each other.
Yeah, I'm experiencing that a bit in Rune Factory Frontier.
Yeah, and the Rune Factory 4 is basically like, okay, first we have to be boyfriend and girlfriend, we're not just going to go straight to marriage. And then secondly, there's a side quest, because every bachelor and bachelorette has their own like side story or some kind of like thing from their past that they haven't quite gotten over yet. So you explore that with them, right? So you basically help them get over whatever it is that their flaw in their personality or their character, and then you can get married. So for me, that was like one of the best parts of it, was the getting to know the characters on a way more intimate level than in previous games.
Much more engaging.
Yeah.
I secretly wish it went to like heavier things of just like, you need to help her get over her daddy issues. You need to help this guy sort through his feelings for his ex-wife. Like, I doubt it gets that heavy. It's probably just like, they had a cat die when they were a kid or something.
One of the things was, which one of the girls was it? I think Margaret had like some kind of like spirit possesses her, I think. Or so.
Yeah, it sounds par for the course.
She gets her voice like stolen by a ghost or spirit, but it reminds her of something from what happened to her in the past. So it's kind of like it's helping her with that issue, and then.
Did you end up in a boat with her in a lagoon and a bunch of animals singing to you to kiss her?
I don't think that's how it played out, but it sounded like that would be something that might happen.
Sha la 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 la, don't be shy about the butterfly. You wanna kiss the girl.
Wow wow. Wow 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 wow. Oh my gosh. That would be such a random call out.
Yeah.
Take that, Kingdom Hearts 3. We can randomly sing Disney songs too.
And nobody will want to hear it ever again. We're sorry, podcast listeners. Tune in for a musical episode next time. No. So Rune Factory 4.
For a special. And then they announced Rune Factory 5, which got me even more excited because the company Neverland, they ended up going out of business like a few months after Rune Factory 4's Western release. So I thought for sure the series was dead, because like without that original team, they probably weren't going to be able to, make another Rune Factory. But most of them end up getting absorbed into Marvelous, and that's the team that's going to be working on Rune Factory 5.
Because I guess they had the rights.
Yeah. So I think Japan has a release date of 2020, which I assume will be for us too. But for me, like that, I just lost my mind when I saw that. So that was my big highlight.
Well, I played the original Rune Factory briefly on the DS. I rented it back when rentals were a thing, and I did really enjoy it because I've come from a Harvest Moon background and absolutely love the Harvest Moon series. Mm-hmm. And just the aspect of adding a bit of dungeon crawling, combat, taming your pets and everything all seemed really appealing to me, to kind of add that different shift to the usual humdrum farming that can sometimes get monotonous of just like, okay, do my chores, go interact with people, give my favorite lady her thing, and move on with my life. Yeah. Rinse, repeat. Having like, I'll go in and like fight to get to wherever I can mine gems and harvest things from animals, and I have to tame a cow now if I want milk. Like, all that was really cool.
Yeah.
And I didn't really get too deep into it until Rune Factory Frontier, that I managed to find a copy of, since they were kind of scarce at that time on the Wii.
Yeah, they were.
And I really dig that game. I still go back to it now and again. I haven't beat it yet because, again, it's a long game, but there's so many deep, complex systems in it that make it really satisfying to dive into. How has the series, I guess, progressed from 1 to 4? Have you gone through each entry?
Played a little bit of 3. I didn't get super deep into it because by the time Rune Factory 4 came out, I played.
Was that the one with the 2 different towns?
No, I don't think so. I didn't play much of 3, so like I didn't play much of 3. I mean, I played like less than 5 hours because I had to get super deep into Rune Factory 4, which is like a big step up for a lot of like Rune Factory games in the series. So that's why I was so super surprised when they went under, because I was like, the sales of this game should have been higher, because I don't know, the quality of this game is just a lot better than the other ones.
But yeah, who knows if there's bad faith from the systems from before. What do you want to see change or grow or in Rune Factory 5?
If they want to like keep a lot of stuff they did in Rune Factory 4, I think they did that right. Maybe expanding more. Like, once you usually get married and have a child, that's basically as far as you go in the game. There's not much that progresses past that. Rune Factory 4 had a little bit of it, where there's a dungeon you have to go through with your wife and child. But I still want more, like, of an expansion on the story past that. So that's something I want to see.
It would be pretty incredible if they kind of made like a legacy system of you raise your kid to basically jump to the point where they can take over the farm and you essentially become the grandparents and start phasing out kind of thing. And then you can kind of keep taking the farm over and you can see how the village evolves through the years. That'd be incredible. I don't think they would ever get that sophisticated with it, because then that's basically becoming like Rune Factory civilizations. But
I think they did, actually. I think they did. I think it's
really?
2 or 3, I think they did that. Where you have your child and then, you know, the parents go missing and then you grow up as the child and you have to go find your parents. I think that's something that happened in one of the Rune Factory games.
That's kind of like a lighter version of it, but yeah, I could see that working. I mean, they could almost even go like Dragon Quest 6 of jumping through time, where the same idea as what it sounds like they did with 2 of you're the parent and then the kid grows up, whereas the parent goes off to do something else or phase out, and you can take over the farm in different phases.
Yeah,
it could work like that too, and you can do that with your marriage and your relationship and stuff. Because in the past, in like Harvest Moon, when you get married, it's just business as usual, except now you have a wife to interact with and your kid.
Yeah, but
they don't really grow or do much or add too much else to the farm. I think maybe they might cook the odd dish for you or something.
Yeah, that's basically as far as it goes. Yeah, that's only as far as like they've ever gone. So I want them to go past that.
Yeah. You can like open a business or something and like your wife manages the business, or, you know, or your child takes over that, or, you know, there's all kinds of nifty stuff that you could do, or your son grows up to be an age, or your daughter grows up to be an age where you can party up and take on the dungeons together or something. That'd be super neat too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would also love to see any of these be somehow like co-op, where you could like have a joint farm.
Oh, that'd be cool.
It's something I've always really secretly wanted from like Rune Factory or Harvest Moon, and it's the recent one that the people from Harvest Moon split off to do.
Story of Seasons?
Story of Seasons, thank you. Yeah. If they could, like, you can do like a crop tour in that one where you can just kind of go and visit the other person's farm, but you couldn't actually like interact with it or do anything. It'd just be kind of neat if you could have like a joint field kind of thing. Which I guess Stardew Valley was diving into, where there was multiplayer where you could work on a farm together, I think, right?
I believe so, yes. I didn't play that one.
Yeah, we don't have our resident Stardew Valley expert here, Mike, to tell us about that. But I think we did do a review, or had a review coming up, of the multiplayer aspect of Stardew Valley. But all that being said, I am misinformed on it. But Rune Factory 5 sounds like it'd be really exciting. And as much as I enjoyed Frontier, if they're able to improve on even the systems of that game, and that game looks, even now, still looks great on the Wii. Seeing this on a modern home console, the powerhouse that is the Switch, bringing these farms to life, it'll likely be a gorgeous game as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
And these farming things always lend so well, too, to, like, picking up and go and just doing small segments of chores and stuff throughout the day, so having it portable with the Switch just seems like a match made in heaven for what has largely been a portable series. What else did we get announced? We got Bloodstained, some more news on that of maybe coming out in the summer. Kaylin, I think you're one of the folks who's been following Bloodstained a little more closely. I don't know too much about it.
No, actually I haven't.
Oh, you haven't either?
No, I basically knew it exists. I don't tend to be a Metroidvania kind of person, so that's right. I saw it. I know it exists. I didn't actually. This is how much I wasn't following. I didn't know that the main character was a woman until the direct. So now I'm kind of more up for it, because I'm always down for strong, badass female protagonists. But I have not been following it.
That's fair. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know too much about it myself. I know a lot of folks at the site are pretty stoked by it, because we do have a lot of, as anyone has heard, Castlevania, Metroidvania fans. And for myself, not too much either. Nathan, we're not sure. Nathan has to run off now that he's imparted his enthusiasm for Rune Factory. He's got work to do, and we're going to be wrapping up ourselves soon, but we have a few more quick hits with the Direct that came out as well. Dragon Quest Builders 2 got a release date in July 12th, another thing for the summer that's going to take up time.
Yes.
people who managed to pick up the late release of Dragon Quest Builders on the Switch, because it came out last year to the Switch. If you have that already, apparently you'll get like a throne that you can build and a costume that matches the original Dragon Quest Builder protagonist's costume, which actually was pretty sweet with the goggles and everything. But I don't think it's enough for me to want to pick it up just for that. From what everyone has said, Rob was pretty positive on the game, despite some misgivings of it, and the misgivings I think were valid that I'm hoping they've improved upon. So maybe now with this whole like first-person combat and stuff, the battle at least mechanics will at least be a lot more engaging in this version than they were in the last one. It seemed a little more nebulous of you hope you kind of hit. There's no real kind of like lock-on system, so it made it a little challenging to get into combat, and you're just kind of swinging at things and hoping for the best. What about yourself? Are you ever been into like the Minecraft and that kind of crafting kind of games?
I like Minecraft, but I never played Dragon Quest Builders because I'm not really into Dragon Quest super much. So, But yeah, I've played my fair share of Minecraft. Yeah. I will say if they do other builders, maybe if they did a Final Fantasy builders, that I would probably be all over.
What would that be though?
It would be awesome, is what it would be.
Well, then we have, was My Life as King, wasn't that a Final Fantasy weird, like, subset back on the Wii?
My Life as King, I don't know.
I feel like that was it was somehow got, like, the Final Fantasy label slapped on it, and it kind of, whenever anyone mentions Ni no Kuni 2, it throws me back to that, where you're, like, a king kind of managing a town kind of thing. But yeah, I don't even know what, like, a Final Fantasy builders would do, but then the same thing, like, no one ever expected Dragon Quest builders to be a thing either, so it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, and it seems like something that could be done. I mean, the Minecraft itself has various different packs that let you, like, that there's a Mass Effect pack for Minecraft, so you can
That's true.
do stuff like that. So,
Skin it up.
Yeah, it could be interesting. It's sort of in the same realm of the Dragon Quest Builders is a mashup between Dragon Quest and Minecraft, but then we have the Heroes games that are sort of mashups between, Zelda and Fire Emblem now with the Dynasty Warriors kind of series. So
and Dragon Quest as well. Actually.
Dragon Quest as well, yeah. So we could totally, I think, throw Final Fantasy in there.
Well, exactly. All you gotta do is throw in the whole classic Chaos and Cosmos. Is that usually the light?
From
Hero?
Dissidia, yeah.
Yeah, and also I think in Theater Rhythm of just like their classic battle, you need to rebuild the world because Chaos ruined it. Yeah, I'm sure they could justify it if they needed that cash cow to come in.
Yeah,
it's just a question of if there still that niche that needs to be filled by more of the franchises to get into the Minecraft kind of oeuvre. Who knows? But yeah, I don't see it being out of the realm of possibility. It's just, again, it's hard to picture, but no one would have predicted a Dragon Quest Builders, let alone for Dragon Quest Builders 2. And then speaking of Dragon Quest, we've got Dragon Quest 11S Definitive Edition. And then there's also, of course, the Echoes of Elusive Age. Is that the moniker?
The subtitle, yeah.
Yes. It's a long title. But it sounds like this is literally the definitive edition to get. It's a question of whether they'll patch any of the stuff over to the previous ones, because one of the biggest complaints against Dragon Quest XI from most people is the lousy quality of the soundtrack that they got, and the fact that the Switch version is getting the orchestration version and the basic one, and you can switch between the two, but why would you? Is definitely going to be fixing a lot of the bad faith built by the original version of the game. One of its very few flaws it had, because otherwise, like, we reviewed it really positively. It's been getting positive reviews all around.
Yeah.
I want to pick it up.
And you can also switch between the English voices and the Japanese voices. So I've not heard bad things about the English voices, but for people who like to play with Japanese, that's another bonus. Mm-hmm. These things I would think would be easy enough to patch into the PC and PS4 versions of the game. Like, it should be easy enough, especially with the music and the voices, to just have that be a download. But, I mean, the question is, will they?
Or will they just package a definitive edition for those consoles?
For PS4 and PC make you rebuy it. Yeah. They could do that because they like to make you rebuy stuff.
Yeah,
so.
They like to grind the gears for that. But at the very least, maybe they'll just make it paid DLC. I mean, that's less heinous, but still rude.
Yeah.
But it's also got the whole, it does the 3DS one. Like, I think everyone was hoping it would bounce, but you could bounce between the console version or the DS version of having the classic gameplay.
Yeah. Which looks really cool, and we all thought we were never getting that because we didn't get the 3DS version localized here.
Yeah, and it's one of those things they're like, oh, we can dream about them abusing the Switch in such a way that we would get that, and thankfully, somewhere, someone listened and did that.
Yeah. I also got Dragon Quest XI for Christmas, and now I'm kind of like, oh, I should have waited.
I'm glad I waited it out. Once I heard the announcement that it was going to be coming to Switch, I was like, well, I may as well wait because then I'll get it on Switch. And if there is any possibility of us getting the 2-version dream, I was like, it's worth hanging out for, especially, again, given my backlog. I was in no rush to pick up 11 as it stood, so I am glad that I waited on it. As you were saying, you haven't huge been into Dragon Quest, but 11 has snared your attention.
Yeah, because it looks pretty, and I've heard so many good things about it. I'm mainly just steeling myself for dealing with the music, which, the orchestral version in the Switch is going to be great. It's not really going to change the music itself not being very good, but, that's what volume options are for.
Yeah, exactly. You can deal with it and put on your own stuff on the background. And
yeah, it's what I'm going to do when I get around to playing the PS4 version.
We got it announced that real soon Deltarune Chapter 1's hitting Switch, which makes sense considering how much everyone loves Undertale. It's been on the Switch for a while, and it plays well. My daughter has been going to town on Undertale in every way, shape, or form. Before we got it, she wanted it for Christmas, and she's was in love with the soundtrack and constantly brings it up, knows every character's theme, is always bringing up all these little Easter eggs and quips and things about it. She got her friend yesterday who was here for a play date to try it, and I could totally tell she was doing a decent job of playing off I don't know what'll happen. I've heard it's an Easter egg if you do this, if you enter your character name as this, but I don't know what's going to happen. She clearly knew it was going to happen. And that it was going to be a hard version of the game if you put in the certain name and these other stuff. And so she was clearly kind of trolling her friend just to amuse herself and prank them a little bit, but it was just really funny to see how into this game she's gotten and from the ground up. And I still need to play Undertale myself, and everyone at the site has said such great things about it. Did you play Undertale, Caitlin?
No, I haven't. I'm bad. I know. I'm so sorry, everyone listening.
Me too. We both just got fired from the podcast. Mike has taken away our hosting badges. But Deltarune's coming up, which has received some pretty good press as well. You'll get Chapter 1 for free, and then the subsequent chapters will come out as Toby Fox works on those, which will be paid for, but that's totally fine because we're paying for good work. If it's anything as creative and as enamoring, is that the word?
I think.
Is that a real word? Okay. I have that.
Well, enamor is.
Yeah.
I think you can use it with the gerund.
I probably could. If it's in any way as creative and as lovable as the original was, with its character interactions and the variety of stories, I doubt Deltarune's full breadth of story is going to fall flat on anybody. We get just announcements that Final Fantasy stuff's coming. Chocobo, everybody. Is March 20th release date. I'm pretty stoked on that. I don't know if I'll get it day one, just again because of backlog and finances, but I really want to get this version of it. I never played any of the past ones, but they always seemed really appealing, and I think now having it that I can play it with Gwen, it might be something that she would like to dive into.
And Chocobos.
Yeah, he's so adorable, and
he's
costumes.
So cute, yes.
Did you see him in Final Fantasy 14? Because wasn't he a buddy or a minion you could get or something?
So Alpha, yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah, Alpha is in this Chocobo's Dungeon game, right?
Yes, that's what it is. It's the other way around. That's right.
Yeah.
So you can get an Alpha outfit.
He's the cutest in 14, and I'm sure he's super cute in Chocobo's Dungeon too.
I wonder what class kind of skills he'll bring, because the whole thing is a job system in Mystery Dungeon.
Yeah, I don't know. He doesn't really have a class in 14.
I mean, his costuming makes me think of Sid, so I'm like, oh, is he an engineer or something?
Yeah.
But they'll just pull out some Balthier moves and start schmoozing on everybody and shooting guns.
No, we don't need more than one character who does that.
But we'll probably get them in some sort of weird future Final Fantasy installment as we get more modern with it. Or maybe they'll go back to something a little more rudimentary with 16. We don't know. We can hope. But right now, they're still milking that cash cow with 15.
I think they've said, and this is obviously very preliminary, it's not even been formally announced or anything, but I think that they said they wanted to kind of move away from technology and technologically advanced countries, cities, whatnot for the next Final Fantasy. So we could maybe expect something a little bit closer to a traditional Final Fantasy experience. I mean,
traditional fantasy.
In quotes. Yeah. In quotes, traditional, like old
pre-6,
more magic, and that's fine with me. I like they kind of ebb and flow between Final Fantasies that are set in worlds that have a lot of technology, and then Final Fantasies that are set in worlds that are more magic and myth based, and then going back and forth. And 15 was a very sort of modern technological kind of setting, so I'm cool with the next game kind of dialing it back a bit.
And as was 13. So we definitely have, we're due for a palette cleanse in the mainline series, because I think in a lot of ways they were also justifying that future setting with 14 being so fantasy-based.
Yeah.
So they're just like, people have that if they want it, but I think if you aren't in the MMO genre, we've kind of all wanted that basic fantasy, Final Fantasy for a while, because we haven't really got that since 12. So we'll see what that comes out with, see what we get from that in future announcements. I don't think that's going to come anytime soon for the next few years, but maybe E3 2021.
It isn't, and it shouldn't. They should really no more Kingdom Hearts 3 where you announce it too early. No more Final Fantasy 15 where you announce it
as a different
early.
game.
Well, I don't know, 15 as a different game.
And
yeah,
7 that was announced way too early. All that sort of stuff. Although speaking of 7. The Switch version's coming in March 26th, so if you want another way to portable around Final Fantasy VII now that the PSP is a thing of the past, you got it again, and it's the up-res definitive version with the HD cleanup and everything, I believe. I'm sure there's better technical words I could use, but those are the ones you get. Enjoy it. And similarly, we've got Final Fantasy IX that came out the day of the Direct. I've picked it up for review, so I'm going to start working on that very soon. I don't have much on it just yet, but I'll probably talk about that in the next podcast to see what kind of improvements were done. I'm just excited to have a Final Fantasy from the PlayStation era that I can just port around with me if I want. Did you get any of them on PSP or Vita? Which one did you have?
I don't have any of them.
Or were you playing War of the Lions on?
Yeah, sorry, War of the Lions. Yeah, I have War of the Lions, but...
Gotcha, but you didn't pick up...
War of the Lions.
Gotcha, yeah, now you have it on Vita. That's what I was getting at. It was a PSP or Vita you have.
Well, I mean, War of the Lions is PSP, but it's playable on Vita as a result.
Because you can download it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember my best friend had 7 on the PSP, and I was just hecka jealous that I'm like, you can just port that around, and then we've got it on Android devices and stuff, of course, but it's just going to be nicer having it on a bit of a bigger screen, and the higher definition for both of these is going to be so pretty, because obviously those games haven't quite aged well, so to speak, although 9 has aged better, and I like that there's going to be like the speed up function and stuff like that, so it'll make grinding it out a lot easier.
Fast forward is kind of a must.
Yeah, I heard good things about it even just watching you a few times on the Twitch stream playing 12 and just getting through some of those stickier points of just like, just throwing a fast forward and get through stuff is so nice to have as an option. And then finally, probably what's going to be like the best definitive graphical edition, Link's Awakening is getting remade.
Yay! It looks really pretty.
It looks so adorable. It's
like
Nintendo
so
Land on the Wii U, the Nintendo Land kind of little like amusement parky kind of graphics of it all.
Yeah.
And like cartoon. Oh, it looks so endearing, and that game has so much charm already. Even with the Game Boy Color graphics, it looked great, and now you have these cute little squishy looking everything from juicy looking trees right down to a juicy little jelly filled Link. Like it's gonna be so great. And you, Caitlin, did you play the original or know much about it? Or
this is the podcast of me saying no, I have not.
That's totally fine.
So
no one's gonna call you out of my turf time. What am I saying? Whatever. I was up very late last night, everybody. So parties, woo, Friday night. Yeah, I played a bit of it myself, only for the first time for the This Day in Gaming series when we covered it, and went through the first chunk of it. So a lot of what they were showing in the reveal is all stuff I've seen, but it just, again, like the new look is going to be so great for that. And if they even bring that over to reviving Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons in the same engine, that'll be stunning.
It was a great way to end the Direct, I think, because it was... I'm not sure if anybody had an inkling that was going to come. That was going to come out or be announced rather. Like it was a surprise to me. I'm sure it was a surprise to a lot of people.
No doubt. And there was like some reaction video from people who were watching the Direct at the Nintendo New York store, and just watching everyone just kind of lose their minds of the battle. Like this was a thing. What? Yeah. It was very similar. I was just like, oh my gosh. And the little, like, again, that cutesy amusement park kind of soundtrack for it they've got developed. It sounds really nice too.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a great way to bring that game to life. And again, and it's still going to be portable, which is great too. So yeah, that kind of wraps up everything that was on the Nintendo Direct. And we've got so much to look forward to. Oh, am I missing something? What did I miss?
Oninaki.
Oh yeah, I did miss Oninaki. That's right. That crazy action RPG from Tokyo Game Factory.
Tokyo RPG Factory.
Thank you. That's the one.
Yes. Yeah, so their latest entry, their third game, is called Oninaki. I'm actually really interested in this. I Am Setsuna looked pretty, but I wasn't interested enough in it to check it out. Lost Sphere was a little bit more interesting, but still didn't quite, grab me. What they've shown so far of Oninaki is kind of cool. It sounds like it's a world that's very much rooted in a spirituality with regards to, there's the world of living and the world beyond, and spirits, people move to the world beyond and they had to make that journey, and if they get bogged down by feelings of anger or grief or whatnot, they turn into angry, evil spirits called the Lost or whatnot. You play as a character whose job is to sort of, guide souls, make sure that they can make the transition to this other world and deal with the souls that remain, that become vengeful spirits or whatnot. It's an action RPG this time around, which it looked really nice and flashy in the brief look that we got of it. So it looks really cool. I was getting kind of a Valkyrie Profile vibe from it, because it looks like part of what you're going to be doing is finding these spirits and maybe, I don't know, helping them with something or taking them with you to help them move from one plane to the other while you deal with the evil spirit. So I'm wondering if there's going to be kind of you can amass a collection of different characters, sort of like you could with Valkyrie Profile.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you'll have a party system, or if it's just simply swapping between different weapon style, fighting style mechanics, which it kind of seemed like it initially,
yeah.
But that also could just be very early where you don't quite have a whole party built up or anything. I don't know how that's going to play out, but it does look like a nice change from what they've been doing. And I'm wondering if it's a good thing that they're stepping away from building nostalgia-based games, because the past two have both been very much love notes to Chrono Trigger's systems in so many ways. So now that they're kind of doing their own thing, it seems, this could just fall right into being a clone of Secret of Mana for all we know at this point, or them trying to recreate Valkyrie Profile or something like that. We don't know, but it does seem like they're finally taking license to develop something a little more unique and start to have their own voice instead of just relying on nostalgia. So we'll hopefully see some better returns for them, and them starting to build a more faithful audience that doesn't just see the cracks in what they've tried to recreate, and instead watch them build something from the ground up.
Yeah, I hope this does well for them. I've always hoped, even if I didn't personally find myself interested in the games, I always hoped that they would do well, and well enough for them to continue making new games, because I think that we need more games, we need more variety, whether it is nostalgia trips or if it's something new. More variety is always better, and it was really nice to see. It was a surprise to see that this team got created to do these sort of, these smaller, I don't want to say budget, but they're clearly not meant to be like the super AAA kind of, graphical powerhouse experiences that Square Enix's main titles are.
No, by no means.
And that's always, I thought that was refreshing and encouraging to see that they're willing to put time and effort and development teams into making games like I Am Setsuna and Lost Sphere and now Oninaki that can fill a slightly different niche within the RPG genre.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that the team, I don't know. I don't know how else to explain it. Clearly, our Tokyo RPG Factory team has been growing, because it's a really quick turnaround too on Oninaki.
Yeah.
As we were discussing pre-show, that Lost Sphere just came out last year.
Yeah.
It came out in 2017 in Japan, but we got it localized here just last year. So they've already, had another team either going to work, because that shows there's a lot of groundwork put into what we just saw on the Direct. So I'm looking forward to seeing more from it, because despite the misgivings people have had of I Am Setsuna and Lost Sphere, I still like what they've put out. I still want to play both those games. I think this studio definitely deserves more opportunity to keep building on what they've already established.
Yeah, I agree.
And now for realsies. I think we've wrapped up all of our actual direct news. So we had a listener question come from Arclight on the Discord. I'm going to bring it up in a future episode since it's just Caitlin and myself at the moment. It's a really great question, I think, for getting some discussion going over. And just the two of us, the discussion will peter up pretty quick because I'm also very interested to see what more people are going to have to say about this specific question. So, not to say that I don't like picking your brain, Caitlin. I just think the more voices the merrier on some of these really good discussion point questions that we've been getting. So, to that end, thank you for the question, Arclight. We'll bring it up hopefully on next episode when we get some more voices in the room. But thank you everyone so far for continuing to give me questions as I ask. So, hopefully we'll get some more for future episodes because that direct just dumped a whole lot of info on all of us.
It was a really nice, like, RPG heavy direct.
Mm-hmm. Although to that end, what was your favorite non-RPG thing that you're looking forward to from the direct?
Probably Astral Chain.
Yeah?
That came out of nowhere, and it looks super slick and cool, and I want to know more about it. So as of right now, it looks like it's a pure action game, so we are probably not covering it. If that changes, of course, we'll talk about it more. But it looked really cool. I'm always down for that sort of, cyberpunk kind of setting atmosphere, and this kind of looks cyberpunkish. There's also, I feel like there's some Snatcher vibes in this, and I'm looking forward to seeing
there's
more.
an anime that reminds me of like the Tokyo Police. I forget the name of the anime, but yeah, it just the cop angle as well just brings something fresh to it that we haven't seen in games in a long time for some reason. For me, like, it just really hit me with a weird like 90s 2000s-ish anime nostalgia that also I found really appealing. And then mashed up with all this other cyberpunk kind of stuff just definitely made it feel like I would have read this manga or something back in the day.
Yeah.
And it would not have been out of place. Did you play any of the Bayonettas? I've never myself.
I have not either. I want to, though. I want to because I know people love them. I think my biggest hang-up with Bayonetta has simply been getting to grips with her character design and some of the provocative things that the game does to her, or that game has her do. I want to play them before I come to a judgment call on that, but it's been enough to make me pause just a little bit, but I eventually do want to get around to playing them. Yeah,
despite the really visceral, fun hyper-action of the game, there's also a huge hyper-sexualization of the character that even myself too, even though I'm probably viewed as the target audience, even I'm like, really? It's not enough to draw me in either. But it's the same, or some of the same team, or it is the same team working on this one, so it's going to have a lot of that intensity, it looks like.
Yeah, certainly looks like from what they showed in the trailer.
Yeah, and I think that'll be really excited to see how this kind of works with manipulating kind of two different points of control, I guess, for combat at the same time. I'm curious how that'll work out.
Yeah, it's interesting. It looks like you chain yourself to a mech and you're playing sort of in sync with them.
Yeah. And it's just a question of, is it going to use both the joysticks to like manipulate one at a time, or do you shift control in like instances between the two? Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how that develops.
Or is there going to be co-op, and maybe the co-op player is playing the mech, or vice versa?
Robot Doggo.
Oh, the robot dog. Yes. Oh God. Thank you for reminding me of that, because I mean, it looks cool and everything, but as soon as the robot dog came, I was like, oh, okay. Gotta have it. I have to buy every game that has good dogs in it.
Insta buy. And then you'll be so conflicted if they ever come out with like Cujo the RPG. There's a dog in it.
Do I want to root for him? I mean, he's kind of like evil and killing people, but he's a dog.
If they did kind of like that Friday the 13th Jason game, where instead of Jason though, you're playing as the dog. I don't know how that would go, but
Okami took a very dark turn here.
Yeah, right. That's true. That's when we do play as the dog. And then, of course, there's Twilight Link.
Yes, yeah, Wolf Link.
Yeah.
And Rapide. You can play as Rapide now in Tales of Vesperia. Like you can on the
Oh, really?
main map and whatnot.
And yeah,
Yeah.
so many good doggos that you could play with. And for myself, the Nintendo lover me, I was glad I kind of, as much as I really wanted to dive into it, I'm glad I held off on Captain Toad Treasure Tracker when it was on the Wii U, even though it used the Wii U in a lot of ingenious ways. Bringing it to the Switch has been great, and now that they've announced that they're going to be doing a free co-op patch to it, that's just fantastic for myself to play with Annette and to play with Gwen, doing all the puzzle solving together, because that's the kind of experience that we generally like to play together. So I'm pretty excited for that to come up, and it's going to be on my list to buy sometime over the next year.
There was a lot of good stuff. I mean, even outside of RPGs, this is a really, really good Nintendo Direct.
I think they're going to have a really good lineup of things to talk about once E3 gets here as well. And then we get to discuss our usual, who wins E3?
Well, they better, because Sony is sitting it out this year, so it's really their E3 to lose, considering that Microsoft usually...
Yeah, they haven't really been
just
super stellar the past
there.
few E3s. I've always come down to either enjoying the Nintendo or the Sony conferences the most. For lack of, well, the Nintendo doesn't really have a conference, but the direct announcements that they give. They have a presence.
Yeah. They did a good... Microsoft did a good job last year. It was better than their previous E3s.
But it still wasn't enough to win me over.
But I mean, between Microsoft and Nintendo, I feel like it. Like I said, it's Nintendo's E3 to lose.
Yeah, that's fair. But even still, will any of us lose when we announce more good games?
No,
it's just a question of whether you have the console or
everybody
not.
wins.
I'm curious if Sony will turn around and suddenly try and do like a Nintendo Direct kind of thing, or do their own little like announcement reel or something, or if they're just leaving it all to the individual developers to announce first on PlayStation or whatever kind of stuff. How they're going to go through that, I don't know. The whole shape of that entire conference is changing, but we'll save that for another episode when we start getting closer to E3. I'm sure we'll have panelists on to discuss speculations and such. Well, Caitlin, thanks for sticking around to chat with us. Nathan, I'm sorry we lost you, but you have priorities that everyone needs to get to, because, gotta make that money, which means I gotta get out of here too to go do that myself. Well, enjoy your Saturday, Caitlin.
Same to you.
I hope to, and everybody, thanks so much for listening. For myself, Caitlin, and our departed Nathan. Wow, that sounded really morbid. For myself, Caitlin, and Nathan, thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode. As always, you can reach us on Twitter at RPGFancom, and you can email me any questions, comments, or send us spare potions at podcast@rpgfan.com. Shout out to you, Steven, and your love of games hard. That's a weird way to put that.